Hello. Um, I'm gonna start the timer so I can keep track of what I'm doing. Hi, I'm Martina. I have been told I'm the only Italian speaking at this conference, which makes me very tremendously happy because I live in Copenhagen, I'm based there, and this is the first very time in my life that I speak about my job at home. So my background is in product design. Back then when I studied, I've been taught that you build prototypes when you know what you're doing. When you already know what the idea is about, you build something that looks like the thing you're going to produce. But then I entered the magic world of user experience and interaction design, and then I discovered that prototypes are super useful tool to actually figure out what you don't know and start from what is not even an idea. Maybe it's just an opportunity area. So the gaps, the question, the unsolved problems in your prototypes are the key to defining the right experience. And to do that, I want to introduce the concept of fidelity. Prototyping can be done with many different fidelities. And depending on the conversation you want to have, you're going to build a different prototype. You can understand that this is a bike wheel, right? So if I bring this to you, there is not much to question around it. If I come with this to you, can be whatever. So maybe there is too much of conversation going on. With a low fidelity, we can talk if this is a cake, if it's a pizza, if it's a wheel. We can have a more structured conversation. So the problem is to understand which question we want to ask. So the important thing is to understand which fidelity we need to use to gather the right answers. And not less important, it's equally important to understand what we can remove from an idea. So not just to understand what we can put in, but also being able to step back and say, okay, what is not needed here? But what is actually what we prototype? I decided to divide them in 3 categories. And I'm going to talk in this lecture about user experience prototype. That is where we get inspiration from user, very early phase of a project. I'm going to talk about, sorry, that was the wrong button. I'm going to talk about scenario prototypes. That is more a communication tool that we use with clients and to communicate a vision. And I'm going to talk about concept prototype. So here's where we get stuff done in the real world. We implement things. And we use prototype mainly to communicate with ourselves and our team. I can say generally what I observed is that in the early phase of a process, normally prototype is what drives the concept. We don't know yet what we are doing, so we kind of let our hands build something, our minds build something to lead us in the right direction. And towards the end, we know what we are doing. And at that point, what we prototype, it's what we want to achieve. But I'm going to start to dig in the user experience prototype that I define as enabler for dialogue between team members with users and stakeholders. So as designer in this phase, we want to test an experience. We are not there to test the prototype. We are very far from usability. We want to understand if our idea has any value for the people we are talking with. For us, prototypes are not static objects. We give them in the hands of user. We let them scribble on them. They can shuffle it around. And that gives us much more answer that we would gather if we just give very defined rules. They can be tools to understand problem at early phases, understand most of you prototype with Retina devices, but sometimes when you prototype for third world, you might have a totally different screen, and then what happen? So because of this, we need to use different media and different materials. And how to choose that, I will go back to the concept of fidelity. We normally prototype in, like I divide it in 3 categories. One is paper prototyping, one is static screens, and the third one is interactive touchpoint. And I tried to put this format better clarity on a scale from low to high fidelity. Normally, we start with paper prototypings and going through defining better the concept. We might pass to static screens and interactive touchpoints. So what do we want to know when we present low fidelity paper prototypes? Normally, we present this to user when we want to talk about the concept. And because these prototypes are so raw, people feel totally free to smash our ideas, drive us in the better direction, or better, like build on our ideas sometime. They feel free to express everything because it's clear that it's not a final solution. And this is like a very fulfilling dialogue. And of course, also from the designer side, because you didn't invest so much time in making them, you're not brokenhearted if it doesn't work. You just go to the next one. Then sometimes we use what we call medium fidelity prototypes that are like, can be static screen. And we introduce this kind of prototypes when we want to start to understand the look and feel and how the look and feel impact the perception of a concept. I can give an example. If you are, I don't know, making an app for exchanging clothes for kids, one thing is if you brand it as a Caritas or like NGO service, and one thing if it's Gucci. That's gonna be a totally different concept. Then the third way we prototype, it's with interactive touchpoints. And we do this when we know that the concept is really related to the digital experience. For example, there is a pairing mode. How that works? Is it led by the phone? Is it like a video? Is it a walkthrough? So in this case, we start to introduce some interactivity. Bear in mind that the higher is the resolution of a prototype, and the more narrow going to be the answer, because more people perceive it's ready and finished, will say yes and no, I like it, I don't like it, and will be less keen in building on your ideas. But I want to give a couple of examples how I've been using these prototypes in the field. This was an app that we made for Coop. Coop is a chain of supermarket in Denmark. And they wanted to do something for their Fidelity card digitally. So we went in a very, very early stage. We already knew that was an app, but we had no clue what people would desire in this app. So we put stuff that were kind of obvious, like the digital card, the total points, personal offer. But then, I think is where comes the interesting part. We put on purpose things that are undefined. What is that pie chart? Is it your food consumption? Is your money consumption? We want people to tell us what they see in it, what they would like to be in the empty space. I love empty space because it's where we get to know things that we didn't imagine before talking with people. And sometimes we even reshuffle things. And in this case, we knew that Fidelity cards are normally used in families. So maybe there is one person that uses one card, or there is two people in the same family that has 2 cards, and how you manage that. What if you open up and suddenly it's not your app, but it's a shared app? What then do you want there? And just with a paper prototype, you start to figure out problems that maybe it's going to be too late when you start to write this on code, because you didn't think at all about the architecture around it. Another example that I love is when we work for pharmaceutical companies. When we work with people that have disease and have the disease that we don't have. It's so important to talk with people that have a problem that you don't have, because it's easy. Like if you, not easy, but if you can be the user yourself, you can always say, all right, I understand the usability, I can go through this. But if you have a skin disease, how would you know if you would like your phone to have your progression of your skin disease, or maybe you want to mask it? I would have assumed that I want to mask it, because what if somebody grabbed my phone and go through my picture gallery? What we figure out is exactly the contrary. People can live with their disease. They want exactly the opposite. But sometimes you need to have this uncomfortable conversation and bring to the table uncomfortable things to understand which is the right direction to go. And now, I'm going to pass to the second part of this lecture. That is what I call scenario prototype. So a scenario prototype is a communication piece that supports and contextualizes the concept before getting to development stage. And as in the category before, we can use different material to prototype. And either we make a storytelling through paper scenarios, or we can make video prototypes. So I'm going to run through fast the paper-based prototypes. But essentially, when we want to communicate a concept that is not there yet, we don't have the money to implement it yet, or the capability maybe in the team, we storytell it to contextualize the experience, to understanding the environment where it will live. Like if it's a school, it's different than it's a hospital, if it's a home or a public space. And we can also go more into depth and start to explore digital touchpoints. So start to figure out, okay, in this experience, to make it happen, we need a computer, we need a mobile, and how this thing will be connected. In general, I will put in the fidelity scale, both of them pretty low in resolution, because the story we are going to tell, it's pretty rough. It's like the beginning of an idea. But I think this process is very, very relevant for designers, because it's where you start to understand if a concept works. Does it work for that context? And often, from this kind of scenario, we make the guidelines for our for the apps that we are going to draw, because again, the context will drive the correctness of what we are designing. But now I'm going to introduce video scenarios, and to do that, ta-da! I'm going to add another variables that you cannot read, but is resolution. The projector is a bit funky with me today. So if the fidelity, as in the other categories, express how close this idea is to the real world, the resolution, it's kind of the quality of the storytelling, what it make it believable. And video has this power to make things believable, even if they might be science fiction. And I'm going to show, for example, in the different categories, so I can also explain which kind of conversation we can have around them. First of all, I'm going to show a very rough, ugly video that I made a while ago. And it's in the category of low. But sometimes this kind of video can be effective because, the pace of the media communicate fast an idea that instead of going through many slides, etc. I'm gonna play it. So as you might have understand, this is a ripoff of Couchsurfing for laundry machine. And what I want to say with this kind of video is that it's done overnight, cheap resources, cardboard, but the idea come across, right? And from here you can start to see things that are concrete, like you have a platform, probably you can browse it through web, maybe you have an app. There is like a need of managing a community, like safety issue eventually if people go to each other home, how you handle the payment, etc. So instead of starting from words or sketch on a wall, like this suddenly become much more concrete. And now I'm going to show you an example about a video that is low resolution but high fidelity. And this video is it's more like a walkthrough of an app, but it's kind of made more interesting about with the storytelling around. And the interesting thing is that again, you don't see it, but like the interface resolution, it's much higher than the video resolution, but still, even if you make something very low budget, it's kind of enhanced.
Radiance is a mobile application that helps you manage your UV exposure for a better vitamin D balance. Designed for Android, you can quickly view your daily UV exposure from a widget or launch the application. From the main screen, you can see your current UV levels or swipe up to reveal more details about the day's conditions and recommended actions. When you go outside, simply tap the stopwatch icon and then playfully enter your skin exposure using the pant and shirt sliders. As you track your time in the sun, your disk of sun rays will fill and change color, building up to a comfortable orange. A custom lock screen helps you track your exposure while outside and gives you an alert when you've achieved your recommended daily dose. If your UV exposure is low, Radiance recommends the amount of sun you need given the day's conditions. Or if conditions are poor, such as during winter months, Radiance can even recommend taking a vitamin D supplement. If your UV exposure is high, Radiance recommends covering your skin or wearing sunscreen to avoid overexposure. Radiance. Enjoy the sun.
So, as you can see, this could have been a walkthrough, screen by screen. It would have been longer, probably. If somebody was talking through live, it would have been less contextualized. And just like very cheaply, like a few images, good storytelling, maybe a bit slow, but still powerful. What lies in the high resolution, high fidelity? Sometimes it's not even just about the quality of the video, but it's like really understand what who is going to be the people use it, in which kind of context. And, well, I'll show it. One thing I forgot. In this case, the interface that we are showing is a bit lower resolution compared to the other one, like the interaction problems are less solved compared to the video just previously shown. But still, that doesn't make the storytelling less powerful. And in a way, you will understand how much you can kind of compensate among those things, how much, if you don't have, if you have problem unsolved with the interface, we can kind of mask it with the storytelling. So I think in this kind of videos, you kind of get lost in the storytelling, that you start to care less if the interface is not that polished. So you can have like conversation around, do we want to do it? Instead of like, does this pixel is correct or not? And now I'm gonna show you, promise, the last video, but it's my favorite category. This is like an area of stuff that doesn't exist, but we make seem real through storytelling.
Today, 371 million people are living with diabetes, and that number is rising steadily. Predictions forecast this number to grow to 500 million by the year 2030. While many patients have access to the right medical care, they often lack the emotional strength and empathetic care they need to manage their health successfully. CareMaps provides emotional support and guidance to help patients manage the complexity of living with diabetes for a lifetime. CareMaps was inspired by a common desire to learn from the real-world experiences of others. It provides meaningful connections between patients seeking advice and more experienced peers who have knowledge to share. The service becomes a trusted part of the community, by forming partnerships with local organisations that people already have a connection to. Patients can participate in community health challenges and support each other by exchanging personal experiences with diabetes. Living with diabetes often means coping daily with a multitude of practical tasks. Care Maps gives patients step-by-step guidance to set achievable health goals. The digital platform then allows people to map their needs to the local care providers that can keep them on track. Care Maps is a steady and reliable companion, always available to help members track personal health data and reward them when tasks are completed. Care Maps makes a big difference in how patients manage their health every day. Patients can share their goals and progress with their physicians in advance of an office visit, providing greater overlap between medical appointments and everyday care. It's easy for people to feel that they face the challenges of living with diabetes on their own. But with Care Maps, patients connect to a community of peers in their own backyard. Care Maps blends practical experience with emotional support to help patients map a personalised path towards better diabetes care.
Well, none of the interface of this video works. It's all JPEGs or keynote walkthrough. But that's not the point. The point when we make this kind of videos is to make people believe that it exists and maybe question why it's not there yet. So it's like we use a lot this kind of prototypes when we have some people that want to communicate to other stakeholders in the company their vision and to make it powerful for them. And now I'm gonna get to the last but not least category, concept prototype, where I'm gonna read it for you because it's white. A concept prototype is a tool to turn abstract idea into tangible solution, try out interactive touch points and flow. So here is really when we have an idea, we know what we wanna do, and we have to make it. But the iteration process is just started again, just in another way. First of all, because we have to make interactive flows. Like, does what we have in our head make sense? And I know it's a bit away from this conference, but for example, this was an interface for a projector. And making a flow for something that has a remote control, it's a very different thing than making a flow for something that has a touch screen. That is a very different thing with the device that uses a mouse. So to understand how this works, we need to do it. Like that, then, like just thinking about it doesn't answer our question. And of course, there is GUI, like the magic word of graphical user interface that, again, if you imagine it, it's very different than try it out, even if it's it's not the final solution, but you need to try it out in the right device. Is it the screen big enough? Is it the text big enough? Is too much text? Is it readable? And is it the right look and feel for what we want to communicate? And sometimes, because at the end of the day, GUI is strictly connected with the interaction flow, right? So there is the need of also to understand if our mental model that we apply works in reality. And there also where we come to prototype interactive touchpoints. I give an example of once we wanted to make a map, navigation map, just with touch. We didn't want any button in the interface. It worked quite all right till we got to how we drop a pin. And we were like, how we drop a pin? So only way to go is prototyping. And we thought, what if you do it like you do it with a pen? Like, you know, I showed to a friend that is in town that he should go there. Can we do the same? would that work? The only way is to try it out. And here I will come to maybe a provocative part of my presentation. That in the past, I think we used to work using prototypes as tool to communicate ideas to developers when the idea was kind of done in our head. And that produced this, like a lot of yelling at the screen and saying, who designed this or who programmed this, and not understanding each other. And I believe that now we are going in this area where finally we are using tools to share ideas and problem solve together. So our scenario is more of a loop. So like if I have a problem, you help me to solve it and vice versa. I even tried to go more geeky down the road and make a schematic of how the process looks like. And I was glad to see that often we start to problem solve with developers even before starting to make a GUI. And like prioritize together and problem solve together and finding the right solution together. Can I go to the next? So this process, as I said, starts with wireframes and interaction flow. So for example, if there is a slider here, like we start to discuss how that slider is gonna be done. And if I did a stupid choice from a design point of view, the developer can tell me, you know, that is gonna take 1 month. Do you wanna spend 1 month in that? Maybe not. But here is a solution, because I do tons of this kind of stuff. So I have like 3 solutions for you. Then we can move on to another problem and decide where we want to put energy and effort. Then we have like the GUI and interaction flow. And I think this evolution that is happening also thanks to tools like InVision, Protoyo, and all these lovely platforms that are out there for us to try interaction before they are real. And this way, I think this word solved 2 big problems for us. One, we don't have to write infinite pages of guidelines just to explain this button needs to have this behavior, but we can show it, and we understand all better. And of course, it's like a tool for us to say what I said before, like to understand interaction flow and GUI issues. And I want to mention Slack, because especially when we work with people that are not in the same building, it becomes essential. So instead of trying to keep track of emailing threads, etc., we can push to each other content and keep track of the history and check out the things that we already changed. And this process, like of getting back to each other, is like is looping. So there's gonna be some interactive sketch going on in one side and the beta version working in the other side. And of course, when there is the beta version, the designers is gonna start to go into it and say, okay, maybe we should move this pixel here, that there, but maybe can happen also the other way around and saying, listen, while building this, I figured that could be cool. Can you design something around it? So that then we can reiterate also a suggestion that doesn't come from us, but come from the coding side. And then my last comment, test it. Because it's proven, and this is not even recent, it's from 2000. See, most of usability problem, you can figure it with 3 people, 75. So, you know, sometimes there is no budget, everybody's in a hurry, but if you can, test it. Even if it's your girlfriend, your boyfriend, make it give it in someone else's hand, preferably that is not a designer or a developer. And I want to finish with one final comment. That is, I feel like all these tools are helping us and change a lot what happened in the final phase of the of our designing process. And I'm wondering if in the future, possibly technology will step in more into the initial phase of a project and maybe feed and inspire concept from the roots. Thank you. Question?
What's your favorite type of prototyping? You've been working with quite a lot of different things. Like, do you have a favorite?
I might not say it here, but it's physical interfaces. Well, I have a product design background, so my love's still into things that I can touch. And I have a weird love for complexity. And when you start to have screen and some other media devices and something tangible, and how these things communicate and create the ecosystem between things, that's my favorite playground. Well, if you're shy, I will be around anyway if you want to make questions later. Thank you.